Now who do you think will win in a fight? A cat with 9 lives or literally Death himself? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this. It's Puss in Boots: The Last Wish with our favorite Spanish-speaking sword-wielding orange cat. So we start off in the void of space, with Puss narrating about a star that fell to Earth, destroying the area and forming the Dark Forest. At the center, the wishing star filled the area with life and basically would grant anyone one wish if it had been found, but it's locked away. We cut to Puss in Boots at his fiesta with a bunch of die-hard fans, including this kid who allowed Puss to step on his face, and his father saying, "We ain't never gonna watch that again." Nah, they're taking it way too far. The amount of bacteria on that kid's face is insane. Puss sings to his fans and has the time of his life, but is stopped by the governor, who says, "Hold up, this is mi casa, not tu casa." Obviously, he's pressed it that the most wanted cat in all the Spanish land is chilling in his house, so he orders his men to arrest everyone and bring him Puss's head. But you already know Puss is an expert in combat and in shooting fireworks at people. He ends up waking up the sleeping giant of Del Mar from the fireworks. The giant trashes the place and kidnaps people, including the kid. Puss launches himself flying like a rocket at the giant and lands a Spanish splinter through his nail. Puss then gets launched into a house and drinks coffee from a random Spaniard, but I thought coffee was supposed to be poisonous to cats, so I don't know how his heart didn't just flatline from that. Puss gets back into the fight. We see him running at the giant, dodging a massive bell. He frees the people and defeats the giant using the bell, but then he himself gets crushed by the bell like Dela Cruz from Coco. He later wakes up in a doctor's office where the doctor talks about him dying, but Puss shrugs it off saying, "I laugh at death." But the doctor asks him how many times he died, and he says, "I don't know, I'm not that smart in math," and then proceeded to list the amount of times he died, which includes getting run over by a bull, mauled by dogs over poker, falling to his death drunk, crushed by giant waves, shot out of a cannon, allergic reaction to shellfish, even though he did just survive drinking coffee, burned cooking with the ginger man, and finally the bell. The doctor says that Puss is on his last life and that he should retire as a lap cat with Mama Luna, but being Puss, he's like, "Hell nah," and walks off with the treats while the doctor says, "Death comes for us all." Puss drinks in a bar when suddenly Death himself appears out of nowhere. He pulls out the bounty paper on Puss and asks him to sign right there. But Puss is like, "You wanna fight? I bet." So then they fight. Puss gets absolutely destroyed, bleeding on his head, terrified, and we obviously get the most goated line from Death saying, "I just love the smell of fear." Puss runs away from Death through the sewage system and makes his way to Mama Luna's house to be adopted, and he buries his clothing since he thinks he's not worthy of the title anymore. Mama Luna adopts him, gives him a bath and a new name, Pickles. He meets the other animals and says meow, but honestly I think he just cursed them out. Over the weeks or months, he transitions from Puss in Boots to a regular cat who looks like they're just done with life. We cut to Goldilocks and the 3 bears tracking Puss in Boots while Puss is talking to a new cat that speaks English and Spanish, but is actually a dog named Perrito, who is unwanted, living under the porch and pretending that he's a cat for food. He asks Puss about his story, which makes him reminisce about his times, but then he reminds himself it's over. Perrito tries to comfort him by making him rub his belly, but Puss just wants to be left alone, which is clearly not an option since Perrito stares at him in the bathroom like, "Hi there." Puss then realizes Death has found him, but it's actually Goldilocks and the 3 bears busting down the door. They ask Mama Luna where Puss is, but she doesn't know, and I did not expect him to have a British accent. Mama Luna tries to run, but Papa Bear just shoves her in a piano and starts playing it. I'm surprised that she wasn't injured despite, you know, her being old, and it's a piano hitting her head. They later found Puss in Boots, but they think he's dead because he's buried it, which is bad because they wanted him to steal the map of the wishing star. The only problem is that they have to steal it from Jack Horner, and well, Puss is dead, so they have to venture off once again. Little did they know, Puss was listening that entire time. He wants the map to grant himself 9 more lives. I don't know why he didn't just grant himself infinite lives, but alright bro, you do you. He asks Perrito to dig up his uniform and ventures off. He gets to the castle, but Perrito somehow follows him. Puss tells him to go home while he sneaks inside. At least Perrito gave Puss a 6 sword to fight with, just in case. Puss gets inside while Jack Horner explains his nursery rhymes background, and now he's Big Jack now. Puss opens the box and gets the letter, but gets kicked in the face by another thief named the Kitty Softpaws. They argue for a bit like they worked it together in the past or something, then the bears come through the roof. They all have an awkward chat and then a chase ensues. Puss and Kitty gets launched out the window and somehow survives, landing on a wagon with my boy Perrito as the escape driver. They drive off while we get some context between Puss and Kitty about Santa Coloma. I'm not sure what that's all about, but we'll figure it out later. Puss is living in the moment again, and of course Death shows up giving him the death stare, which makes him fear a bit. Jack suits up to chase Puss and Kitty with his baker's dozen. They open the map and finds it's in the dark forest, so they head there while still bickering on who holds the map. Perrito suggests he could, but Kitty doesn't trust him since he's too nice, and Puss as well for other reasons. We get a montage of them traveling along with the others. They get to the dark forest and head inside the portal, which at first makes Puss's hand disappear before coming back, but then they hop in and wake up in another place. Puss tries to use his puppy eyes to convince Kitty to give him the map since they still have beef from Santa Coloma. She retaliates with her own puppy eyes, making Perrito pass out from the cuteness. They finally open the map, and when one of them touches it, it forms the road for them based it on their heart. And you can already tell that Kitty and Puss have bad hearts compared to Perrito, who has like the river of relaxation. They decide to give him the map and go since Goldilocks and the bears survived it. They run, Puss gets cooked it by a flower while Kitty gets launched it by one. Perrito realizes that you need to take your time with the flowers and smell them, which is what he does while Puss and Kitty looks at him weirdly. Perrito later reviews his backstory. As a puppy, his prankster family will always play hide and seek with him and always made him it. They put him in crates, dumpsters, and even a sock tied to a rock and threw him in a river. Yet somehow he's still positive. My man needs therapy, holy bruh. They continue walking while Goldilocks and Jack rushes to their location. Jack smashes Goldilocks and the bears with Excalibur. They reach a forest of flowers and Jack orders his men to cut down the trees, but a guy named Jerry gets eaten and the rest of the crew falls one by one. Just like that scene in Skull Island from King Kong. So Jack pulls out a bird flamethrower and sets the flowers on fire, all while the lotus on his shoulder, which is his conscience, doubts every decision he's making. Meanwhile, Puss's crew is on the river. Kitty teaches Perrito how to do the puppy eyes and advises him never to trust people. Puss attempts to convince Kitty to cut his beard. She finally does after letting him suffer for a bit, and cuts like a pro barber. She gives him her blade and reminds him about Santa Coloma while Puss throws the stick sword somewhere and Perrito goes after it because, you know, he's a dog. The duo meets Jack, who's holding Perrito as a hostage, and Goldilocks. We have another fight scene and Jack is a menace. He shoots his own men with a unicorn crossbow and doesn't care about them at all or if they died. Puss sees more explosions and he sees death yet again, just aura farming in the distance that causes him to run away in fear with Perrito chasing after him. While Kitty is left to deal with the mess and Goldilocks gets the map. Perrito eventually finds Puss, who's having a panic attack. He lays on his stomach to calm him down. Puss explains that he's afraid. He's on his last life and supposed to be a fearless hero, but without lives, he's nothing. We also finally learn what happened at Santa Coloma. Puss was supposed to marry Kitty at the church, but left her at the altar, which explains the familiarity between the two that I was talking about. I knew it! I knew they knew each other! He's ashamed of himself for hurting her so badly. Kitty overhears the convo but pretends she didn't, and the trio plans to get the map back. Goldilocks and the bears continue on the journey and they discover the cabin back home created by the map, and they go inside. Goldilocks discovers her old book and an illusion of herself when she was younger, jumping on the beds, which makes her emotional since Mama Bear says that's when our world became just right. We cut back to Puss and Kitty bonding more as she pulls him up from falling. Puss tries to apologize for his mistake in Santa Coloma, and Kitty reveals she didn't even go either. She wasn't about to compete against Puss's one true love, which is himself, but now she doesn't see that guy anymore and takes his hat, which is kinda a W in fixing their relationship. We then see the menace Jack again debating whether to let them steal the map and kill them afterwards or just outright kill everyone. The lotus on his shoulder is obviously disgusted since Jack doesn't value life, which is clearly not a surprise considering he's literally walking all over his people. Jack also explains his background. He grew up rich with nothing bad happening to him, but now he wants the wish to get all the magic in the world. Yeah, do not give this guy the wish. We see him kill more of his crew and flicks off the bug because, well, he's a monster, but at least he saves one person clinging to dear life. Meanwhile, the trio finds Goldilocks' house and attempts to infiltrate it, with Perrito giving Puss a slap on the butt for good luck. Ayo. Puss grabs the map but gets caught, so he throws it to Kitty, who uses it to destroy the cabin, while Goldilocks throws her stick to pin the map and everyone else scrambles after it. Puss and Kitty share a chaotic moment. They dance, throw porridge at the bears, dance again, and somehow secures the map. Yep, their relationship has officially reached its peak. They realize Goldilocks has Perrito, so they chase after him using the map, but Puss activates it, transforming the area into giant ice crystals that separate him and Kitty. He tells her to go first while he figures a way out. This is when we meet Puss's former 8 lives and they all bond through singing together. Goldilocks sets a trap for the cats to save Perrito. Perrito adds fuel to the fire, leading to Goldilocks and Baby Bear roasting each other in a British manner. Perrito even curses them out, which I did not expect, and the group gets so distracted that Perrito escapes and the bear accidentally triggers their own trap. We cut to Puss talking to his former selves. He realizes he doesn't want that life anymore. It was lonely and not worth the fame. His old selves insult him and he tries to walk away, but then Death shows up once again. Death destroys his old selves and menacingly says,
I'm Death, straight up.
Puss runs again, ignoring Kitty and Perrito, and he reaches the heart of the star, activating it. We also see an emotional moment with Goldilocks and the bears. Her wish is for a proper family, not just bears. Mama Bear supports her decision and the four head to the middle, just as Jack also arrives. Kitty confronts Puss again, realizing she's been played, and admits her only wish is for someone she can trust. She hands Puss the map to make the wish and walks off. But then Puss yells, "Death is after me!" And the rest of the gang shows up. A chaotic fight ensues over the wish. A lot of shooting, pushing, and kicking. Baby Bear nearly gets sucked into the wall, but Goldilocks and the other bears save him. Kitty finally kicks Jack into his own bag, sending him into the endless void. Very deserved. Perrito gives Puss the map again, but Puss hesitates. Death then shows up, and this man does not go away, and creates a ring of fire around him for a final 1v1. He gives Puss his sword back, and Puss finally realizes he's tired of running and is ready to fight for this life. They exchange blows. Puss kicks Death in the face, but Death smiles and forms a staff from the two scythes. Puss is losing, but he pulls out his trump card that Gadito Blade Kitty gave him. He grabs his sword again and easily wins the duel against Wolf, taunting him to pick up his scythe. Bro actually laughed at Death this time. Death realizes Puss is not the same arrogant, overconfident, laughing Puss in Boots. He's now a cat that values life. Death walks away, telling Puss to live his life well and he'll be back in the future, whistling one last time like the legend he is. Ho ho, but the movie's not over just yet. Jack refuses to quit, growing giant from eating the magic snacks. Perrito tries to charm him with puppy eyes, finally succeeding without looking like he's having a hernia. But it is a distraction for Kitty, Puss, Goldilocks, and the bears to get the map and deliver a Spanish splinter to Jack. The three, along with the Lotus Bug and the Firebird, destroy the map and escape the platform, just as Jack and it explodes into a million stars in the sky. The movie ends with Puss and Kitty reuniting and keeping Perrito, while Goldilocks and the bears return home after an emotional reunion, with the Lotus and Bird following them. The trio then sets out on a new adventure, stealing the governor's boat to a land called it Far Far Away. Overall, a really solid movie, and the amount of horror farming from Death in this movie was insane. I give it a solid 9.5 cats out of 10. Like and sub if you enjoyed this video, and see ya!